Hello, this is Alex from BC Designer, and in this video we're going to discuss strategy maps, the guide for the strategy maps that we have on our website, and I suggest to start with a quick introduction to the concept of a strategy map. What is a strategy map? I prefer to start with these visuals. So a strategy map, if you search in search engines, you'll find diagrams like this, for example, with these four perspectives, or a map like this. Actually, this one is from BC Designer software. Or maps like this that normally business consultants do for their clients when they create a strategic plan and when they design a strategy map. Talking about the origins of the strategy map concept, of course, it existed a long time ago, but if we're talking about the date, the period when the strategy map term became popular, I would name the Kaplan and Norton balanced scorecard concept, respectively, in the mid 19th. And basically one of the maps that I showed you in the beginning, the four-sector diagram, was one of the strategy maps, one of the diagrams that was used in the original books. Now, to give a better explanation of what is a strategy map, I always prefer to talk about the practical application of this map. And in the case of strategy map, what kind of application do we expect from this business tool? And given a very brief introduction, I would say that a strategy map solves these three problems, helps to solve these three problems. First of all, as a classical geographical map, strategy map helps us to visualize the strategy of the organization. So the first problem that it solves is visualization of the strategy, obviously, because if we don't have a strategy map, the strategy still exists, but it exists in the heads and minds of top managers. So having a map, something on one page of paper, we can have a visual picture. And when we have this visual picture, when we have a strategy map, we have some base for the discussion. Imagine that you have a kind of strategic plan that is a 60 or 90 page document, and it's hard to discuss strategy using this document as a base. Of course, companies do it, but they do it once a year, and the quality of this discussion is relatively low. What changes when we have a strategy map on a single page of paper? The discussion is much more effective just because the format, having something in a smaller format, just on one page of paper with just basically a few pages of supporting documentation, is much better than having a document with 90 pages. And finally, where strategy maps help us. They help us to visualize the strategy, they help us to discuss the strategy, and finally, when we do what we expect to do, when we execute the strategy maps help us to keep track of what we are doing. So execution step. This is a very general, very brief description of the purpose of having a strategy map. But anyway, I think that's the key answer to the question, why do we need a strategy map? Now, how to create a strategy map? This video will give an answer to this question, and also in the description for this video I will share a link to a PDF template that you can download and how to use this PDF template. Well, basically, you do brainstorm your strategy, and you need to put down some of your ideas on paper. You can use a paper version by downloading this PDF template, or you can go to the BC Designer online, create a free account there, and start with software automation. It's up to you. The PDF template by itself is a good starting point, but you need some kind of instructions, and I will share in this video the 8 steps that one need to follow to create a good strategy map. So this will be your guidance. And we'll also talk about 8 typical mistakes that we know that you will probably make when creating a strategy map. And obviously, I will share some ideas, and we won't have time to discuss all of them. In this case, I will mention that there is an article that explains some ideas in detail, and I will share with you the links to these articles. Finally, I invite you to ask your questions in the comments for this video. We'll do our best to respond them in timely manner. Well, let's get started with a template. So here is a screenshot of a PDF template that you can download and print it out and start filling in. Or, as I mentioned before, an alternative approach is to sign up with the software, with BC Designer Online, and do everything in the software. Of course, as a vendor of the software, I would recommend you to go ahead with the software, but I do understand that there are some situations when it's easier to start with a paper version. For example, in our workshops, sometimes we just use some template to get started because it's easier. Of course, later we need to move it to the software, but anyway, it's an option that you have. Now I'm going to explain how to use such templates. And to explain this, I will use this strategy map template, an example of strategy map for sustainable growth strategy. Any organization wants to grow in a sustainable manner, and there is the Organization of United Nations that have a list of global sustainable goals. So it's something that I hope will resonate with any organization, because any organization wants to grow in a sustainable manner, reducing footprint, reducing some economical outcomes of their impact, controlling some social impact and these things. So anyway, it's not about the sustainability growth, it's more about how we create this map. And this map was created in BC Designer online software, so this is our way to promote the software a little bit when we share this educational content. So we'll talk about 8 steps, and I have grouped them in some groups that you will see. And the first group includes these 3 steps. Step 1, define mission, vision, and values. I know that it sounds like something that business consultants always suggest a company to do, and they promote these ideas saying that, values are important, mission are important, vision are important. And I do understand that some business professionals are actually skeptical about this step, and sometimes it looks like, okay, it's something unnecessary. I do understand this position, but still I agree with those consultants who suggest to start with this step. Why should we do this? For example, mission and vision, I see them as a very top-level goal in front of your organization, the goal that you will probably not achieve or achieve in a very long time period, like 10 or 15 years. So you need to have this because it gives you a direction to north. So if you face some challenging situation and you don't know how to react, you don't know where to move, look at your mission, look at your vision, look at your values, and these artifacts will give you some direction, some idea to move. So it's a good idea to define this. Step number 2 is about defining 4 perspectives. These perspectives, I will name them finance, customer, internal business processes, and innovation perspective. They come from the Kaplan and Norton Balance Scorecard. But you can also prove that these perspectives actually some universal perspectives. How to prove this, how we do it in our workshops. You can ask people in the room to name the most challenging, the most important goals that any organization face, with the one condition that the answers, that people should share the answers. So they should come to the agreement about the goals that they want to have. And if you do this experiment with a relatively large data set with a necessary number of people, you'll find that normally people talk about the same goals. So obviously, companies want to be successful in terms of finance. Obviously, companies need to give their clients certain value, and obviously companies need to do something internally to improve their product, to build some good team, to improve their certain capabilities. And of course, looking at all these 3 goals, companies understand that they know a lot, but in many cases they need to research even more. They need to innovate their methods. They need to train their team. They need to improve their infrastructure, these things. So the innovation perspective is also a must. So if you do these experiments, you will find that these 4 perspectives actually a kind of universal structure that will help to map any strategy of any organization. Okay, so we have our top level goal, our mission that is supported by vision and values. And this is the highest level of abstraction. And the next level of abstraction are the strategic priorities. So we can define normally 3 top level goals that we want to achieve in our organization. These top level goals are shared not just by Kaplan Norton Balance Scorecard concept, but also by other experts. And again, the kind of universal priorities, universal, also called strategic themes. For my opinion, it's just the next level of abstraction. So the first one was a mission, vision, values, and the next one, more specific, there's three strategic priorities or 3 strategic themes that your organization wants to follow. In general, these themes are focusing on customer service, focusing on operationals, and focusing on improving your product or service. Okay, so 3 steps, and respectively on the strategy map diagram, again, this is a strategy map from our software. You have a mission statement on the top. You have 4 perspectives, and probably you can add some additional perspective if you need, but normally we have these 4. And finally, in the map legend, you have the strategic themes explained. What's next? Once we have these 4 perspectives, we need to define the business goals. The step number 4. What is important when we define business goal? First of all, we want these goals to be strategic, not operational. And I'm going to share a link to an article where I explain the difference between strategic and operational goals. Another thing that is important is that these goals should support each other. So we have certain goal on the map because it helps to achieve the goal from the next level. So if we have some financial goal, it should be supported by certain goal from customer perspective. And if we have some goals in the customer perspective, they should be supported by certain internal goals. So this cause and effect logic is must for a strategy map. Step number 5, describe rationale. What is all about? It is a set of reasons that stands behind a goal. So if there is a goal on our strategy map, we should understand why we have it there. Or understand is not the right word in this case. I prefer that we put it down, put these reasons in the description of the goal or in a separate document if you do a paper version, but you need to describe them formally. So your team needs to understand why you have this very goal on your strategy map. Why is it important? So imagine that, for example, on our marketing strategy map, we have a goal to make educational videos like this one. And some member of our team is checking out this map in 1 year. And the only thing that this member sees is that we have a goal to create educational content. There is some context for this goal, but it's not clear why we decided to do this, to follow this very approach. It's not clear. Probably because we did some research and we found out that people prefer educational content over some promotional content. Probably we did some experiments and we found out that paid ads are not so effective as educational content. Without this reasoning, without knowing this reason, the person who will look at this map will not understand how things are working. And that's important. From my experience, I can say that we're all human beings and we forgot things. Even if I will be looking at this map, even if I have designed this map, I will not remember all the details, all the reasons behind these goals. So it's crucial to have these reasons and to have them written down in the supporting documentation, or if you use automation software, in the description of the business goal. Or into the next steps. Step 6, defining metrics. Okay, the thing about metrics, KPIs, is a kind of contradictory topic. Why? Because people perceive KPIs as some kind of control tool that managers use to control employees, pay bonuses or not pay bonuses. And we talked a lot about misuse of KPIs, where people, employees in a company are trying to game the system and trying to keep KPIs in a green zone while the actual business performance is not that good. So in the context of strategy map, I would recommend to think about KPIs in a different way. Don't think about them as a measurement tool. Think about them as a way to explain your business goal better. Yeah. So, for example, you have a goal: train team, train certain skill, and this goal is relatively vague. It's not clear what we mean by this goal and how to make it more specific. We can describe it more detail. We can add some certain explanation. We can add rationale. But one proven way to make this goal a very specific, very easy to understand is to explain how we're going to measure it. Because when you can explain how we're going to measure things, you actually define them. And in the context of strategy map, I would recommend to have at least one leading metric and one lagging metric. So the leading metric will tell you how good you are in terms of actions, in terms of um, creating the conditions necessary to achieve this goal. And the login metric will help you to validate the results that you have achieved. So most people prefer to focus on login metrics and forget about leading ones. So make sure you have both of them. In the description of the video, I will share a link to the article where we explain the difference between two types of the metrics and, well, basically how to have a good one. By now, we moved from the highest level of abstraction, the step 1, to a lower level, the step 3, which was strategic priorities, then to business goals, even more lower level of abstraction, and the lowest level of abstraction that we have discussed so far, step 6, are the metrics. Okay, so we have business goals and we have metrics, but do we have enough information to get started and start executing the strategy, start acting? Probably not. In many cases, there is a still gap between the way the goal is formulated and the way the goal will be executed. And to fill this gap, we have initiatives, our action plans that are aligned with business goals, that are aligned with indicators. And by adding these action plans, by adding these initiatives, we're getting to the highest or to the lowest level of abstraction, depending on where we come from. And that's where we finish the strategy map design. We have finished it, but we still have step 8, which is cascading for strategy map. Why do we need to cascade a strategy map? Imagine that you have this strategy map template, sustainable growth strategy template, designed by a CEO and some top managers. So for top managers, this map will make some sense. But what if you will show it to your marketing team, for example, or you will show it to the development team? The goals from this high-level strategy map, they won't resonate with the challenges of lower-level departments. People, for example, from customer support won't understand how they can contribute to these goals explained on this map. And what is the solution? Solution is to align the top-level strategy map with a lower-level strategy map, to cascade the top-level strategy map, cascade top-level goals to the necessary level. If we do this, the people from, let's say, customer support will have a, let's say, localized version of strategy map that resonates with their challenges, and it will be easier for them to define a relevant response plan and to execute strategies that will eventually lead to the execution of top-level strategy. So that's the idea. Don't forget to cascade your strategy map. So these were the 8 steps to create a strategy map. Now, typical mistakes. And how do we know what are the typical mistakes? Well, we do strategy execution training where the participants build a prototype of their strategy scorecard. And that training is organized in the following way. So we have some training video, and the participants follow the instructions in the training video. They get some theoretical background, and then they build there are 4 blocks, 4 steps. They follow the instructions and build their strategy scorecards and send us back for the review. And according to this, according to the review of these homework tasks, we now know what are the typical mistakes that many organizations do. And here they are. Goals without connections. We'll look at the strategy map and we see that there is certain goal, let's say an internal perspective, that has nothing to do with the rest of the goals on the map. And we give our feedback and we ask, why do you have this goal on the map? It's like it doesn't look like something relevant to other goals. And here we have different options. Sometimes people say, okay, yeah, my bad, it's not that good for this map. And some say that, okay, here's how it contributes to that goal in customer perspective. It's okay for us. We're not going to use the strategy map. So we're just giving our feedback, and probably we don't know all the context. But the thing is that your team needs to know this context. Your team needs to understand why you have this map, how it contributes to other goals, and so on and so forth. Sometimes, like in this example, we have goals from learning and growth perspective that are not specifically linked to any business goal on the map. And normally it means that this goal will contribute to all goals on the map in a certain way. Like, for example, imagine that you have a goal in an innovation perspective and learning growth perspective that is analyze customers' behavior. So we always want to learn more about the needs of our customers. And when we get some insight, get some results from this goal, these results will influence on the all goals in all perspectives. So it will help us to give an idea how to increase an average cart value, the financial goal. It will give us an idea about how to serve clients better, the goals from customer perspective, and it will give us an idea about how to build a better product, the internal goal. So in this case, this connection is implied, so that's why we don't have it on the map. But make sure that goals on your strategy map contribute to other goals. Mistake 2, it's similar to mistake 1, but it's a little bit different aspect. Focusing on operational goals. So imagine that you have a goal in an internal perspective, which says that you want to improve, let's say, the engagement indicator for your product, or you want to increase the percent of clients who want to unlock the percent of clients who unlocked key functions of your product. So it sounds like a good long-term goal, but at the same time, you have next to this goal, you have another one which says basically that you want to install some plugin to your website. So very short-term operational goal. It's not nothing bad about this operational goal, but it's not the right place for it. So basically, you probably you need to have it in the form of an initiative, or you need to have it on a strategy map for a marketing or web development department, but it's not for the top-level strategic map. And that's a sign of a bad strategy map design when you mix the strategic and operational goals. Again, in the description, I will share the link to the article where we explain the difference between two types of goals. Mistake 3, no rationale. I explained before why it is a problem, and when you send, for example, in case of this strategy execution training, when you send your strategy map for a review, we don't have all your experience about your business niche, and we don't know all the background that we need to know. So if we don't see the explanation on the map and the description of the goal and the supporting documentation, then we'll tell you that, okay, probably you know this, but we don't know this. And it's not a problem. Again, we're not going to work on this strategy, but your team will work on this strategy. And probably some members of your team won't understand why you have this goal. And if they don't, probably they won't be able to help you execute this goal in the best way. So make sure you don't use this. You don't make this mistake. Mistake 4, using login metrics only. That's typical for a certain style of leadership, certain style of management. When you create a goal and you define some benchmarks that your team needs to achieve, but you don't spend time on discussing the ways to achieve these benchmarks. And obviously, you need to spend time on this. You need to discuss with your team the success factors of achieving this goal, or at least you need to formulate an initiative that would say something like this. We have this goal, and the first thing that we need to do before we even have the login metric, the first thing that we need to do, we need to understand what are the success factors. So we need to do certain experiments. We need to validate those experiments with certain metrics. And only after this, we will go ahead with a more serious approach to this goal. So the ideal situation is when you have at least one leading metric and at least one lagging metric. Mistake 5, having a top level map only. I mentioned this before. If you have a strategy map that works well for top managers, most likely it won't make a lot of sense for other departments. So you need to involve other teams in the discussion around strategy. You need to create local version of strategy maps that should support the high level strategy map. Mistake 6, having too many goals. What do I mean by too many? Okay, if I see that there is 3-4 goals in each perspective, it's okay for me. If I see like 5-8 goals, it's a yellow light for me. And I see more than 8 goals, 8 to 10 goals, it's a red flag for me. Why it happens? It happens because of mistake 2, because of having operational goals in a strategy map. It happens because of mistake 5, not cascading your top level strategy map to lower levels. So you mix everything in one map. So if you have this situation, consider reviewing your strategy map. Another reason why it happens is because you put different goals of different levels of abstraction on your map. You put, as I mentioned, mistake 2, strategic, operational, and you also put something on the map that looks like an initiative. It should be an initiative, but you put it as a goal, and that's one of the reasons you have too many goals. Mixing goals and metrics. That's interesting. Have you ever seen a goal like increase sales by 15% within a year? Yeah, that sounds like a good goal, like a smart goal, because it includes everything, includes timeline, and it is tangible because it gives a specific number and things like this. The problem for a strategy map is that you're mixing together different concepts. You're mixing together the goal, which in this case is increase sales. You're mixing it with a target, which is a 15%, and you're mixing it with a timeline, which is within a year. Nothing bad about the goal, but when you have a strategy map, you will find difficulties to automate it. You'll find difficulties to support it when you will need to update your strategy map. And I think on the conceptual level, it's better to divide and track separately your goals and the way you track them. Because the goal of increasing sales, when we have a separate goal, increase sales, we now have free space to start defining metrics for it. And we know that we can define login metric, like, for example, the sales within a year, or we can also define leading metrics related to the success factors. And in this way, we can describe this goal better, not just limiting ourselves to certain way of measuring this goal. Yeah, I think it's enough for this mistake. So don't mix goals and the ways to measure them. Mistake 8 is abusing business jargon. Again, in the article, I mentioned this the way that some companies formulate their goals is something like this: leverage business opportunities to satisfy customer demand. Yeah, it sounds smart, but uh, what what do we mean by this? Yeah, so leverage business opportunities. Basically, we can say use business opportunities, and use business opportunities. We can basically just remove it. Yeah, so we're always using business opportunities. So instead of this, we can just say that satisfy customer demand and customer needs. So we can simplify this goal a lot. And when we do, we find out that this goal is not that smart and it's a generic goal. And probably we can find better ways to formulate it. So many companies have a strict rule about using plain English to explain the goals on their scorecard, so that everyone in the company is clear about things that you want to describe. So we have explained 8 steps to create strategy map. We have talked about typical mistakes, and I thank you for your attention. I will share in the description the link to download a PDF template, as well as the link to the same template in BC Designer Online. I also encourage you to ask your questions in the comments for this video, and we'll try to answer them as fast as possible. And I also suggest you to open a free account at webbc.com, where you can access some free strategy map templates like you saw before for sustainable growth. And those templates is a great way to get started with your own business strategy. That's all for this video. Looking forward to answering your questions.